Hello, everyone. Welcome. We continue on with the mind work practice. Tonight, we'll start. First of all, we'll do a bow and the four great vows. Please join your palms. Bow. The four great vows. I vow to deliver innumerable sentient beings. I vow to cut off endless vexations. I vow to master limitless approaches to Dharma. I vow to attain supreme Buddhahood. Okay, now we can begin. Um, Over the past few weeks, I've been um, kind of presenting what I'd call a frequent refrain about the practice of right view. And in this refrain, you'll hear me say things, and sometimes I'll repeat it in different comments to different people. And the reason this comes up this way is because I read this in not just one, two, three sources, but many sources. And it is this way. For some reason, when we study the Dharma in the beginning, we don't pick this up. I don't know why. We we rush through and don't really understand how to how to penetrate the sutras or penetrate the teachings. And it is why I go from one source to another source to show you the connection there and to show you this common ground that's there. And then all of a sudden, somebody will get it and they'll go, "Oh, I get this. I see." And then the funny thing is that they will see that same um, refrain everywhere they read. They will not only see the refrain that way, but in everything that they do, it will be testifying to the realization that they made of just this mind, this idea that there is nothing beyond this mind, nothing that is conceptual, but on the other hand, those concepts are not separate from mind itself. When we try to apply samsaric logic, it doesn't quite work. It doesn't get us there. And as recent as this morning, one of my students was saying, I've been practicing, but I don't quite get there. Something seems to be wrong. And I said, because you've practiced sincerely as far as you could go in the samsaric side, and it can't take you any farther. It's like you bump into it and you can't go any further because you're still trying to penetrate from the idea of a life or a personality, ego, or some kind of a being, and there is not such thing. A lot of times, people get confused about this concept of no self, and even quite can't quite penetrate the this idea of that not self as the Buddha had presented it. This idea of not self is one that is difficult for us because as soon as we hear no self or not self, we want to rush it over into the nihilistic side. We put it over there with, you know, Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny and whatever else that is not real. But the Buddha didn't say no self, he said not self, saying we don't throw this all out like the proverbial baby with the bathwater. All of that stuff, there's no place it can go. It belongs to mind. And being something that belongs to mind, we don't understand that because we get to the point where we say that and say conceptually, I understand what Gilbert is saying. But you've got to go further than that. You've got to put it into practice. And it's in the practice where the realizations will come. It's in the practice when you sit to meditate. Oh my gosh, it makes your meditation so easy. But we complicate our meditation. We want to try to hold on. Okay, relax, relax. Sit here. I'm relaxing. Okay, pay attention to the method. Gilbert, pay attention to the method. Don't let a thought come in. What's that thought? Oh, you did it again. You started thinking about something. And you go, I can't do this. This is crazy. Instead of coming to the cushion, mind comes to the cushion. Mind sits down. Mind picks up the method. Mind sees that the method is projected on mind. The method is not separate from mind. Mind is simply resting in the present moment. How hard is that? If an onslaught of thoughts come in, which of course they're going to, then mind still rests. It just has nothing to do with it. It is part of mind anyway, coming in from causes and conditions. It's like, check it out and see, that's how mind works. But because of our ignorance, we don't understand that. And we think that we should calm this baby that's called the ego. Calm it down, calm it down. Don't let it get too perturbed. Don't let it run around the room. If some of you who are parents, ever tried to calm down an excited 2-year-old, you'll know what I mean. Especially if you put a 2-year-old in a place where they've never been before, they're running all over the place. It's okay. We just understand that 2-year-old has nothing to do with us. We just let it be. One master said it's like watching a child at play in a playground that you've taken them to, a safe place, and you're aware of that child, but you don't have to look at the child all the time. You're just aware where that child is at, what that child is doing. That's enough. So when we see things and they're arising, we know this thing that we call the ego is going to arise, but we don't take that for ourselves. We don't take that to be, oh, why am I having so many thoughts? It's just simply these thoughts are naturally arising in accordance with causes and conditions. Mind is nevertheless relaxed because it comes from mind. This is the part we don't understand. The idea of ekayana and the idea of this sudden illumination of the mind. It isn't necessarily enlightenment. It's a realization that everything is created by the mind. When we practice in this way, we can practice well. So this is a preface to what we're going to talk about Huangbo, because I think it's important for you to understand where he's coming from, and so you can see this refrain in what he's doing and his reference points. So if we can put up the page 116, please. Okay, so we're going to be looking at the left-hand side. I don't know if you can scooch it over and just make it one page or not, but in any case, the first question is, what is implied by seeing into the real nature? Oh, thank you. That's much better. And if you remember, the part above was where we left off earlier when we were discussing this with the 8,000 line sutra of that a sword does destroy a sword and they destroy each other. So we're continuing on now. And so what we're doing is the question is, what is implied? What is meant by seeing into the real nature? So if you practice and all of a sudden you have a realization of seeing into the nature, what is implied by that? It doesn't even say what does that mean or how do you know that you've done that? It's just saying what is the significance of it, which is a proper question. And the answer is that nature and your perception are one. So right from the beginning, boom, he really slams it home. Perfect. That nature and your perception are one. Now, the idea when we talk about that your perception here isn't your perception as an ego. He's referring to you as mind. So if we read this and said that nature and mind perception are one. In fact, sometimes I mention they're not even one, it's where the one returns to. This perception is a different perception. It is not the perception of the five skandha. It's your true perception of mind. We'll get into that a little bit later. You cannot use it to see something over and above itself. So clearly, he's not talking about ego. He's saying you cannot use it to see something over and above mind. What would there be? What could be there that isn't mine? There is nothing that isn't mine, but being that way, because everything are one, there is nothing to call something outside of mind. That non-existence is non-existent. Hang in there, hang in there. This is an acquired taste. You have to get used to the language of Chan to be able to deal with this. And then existence and non-existence and these statements will begin to make sense. But you have to challenge yourself. Hang in there with me, okay? Don't start swaying. Don't start looking at what happened today on your computer. Hang in there. You have to hang in there if you want to really contemplate this. That nature and your nature of it are one. Again, coming back to this ekayana. You cannot use it to hear something over and above itself. So could you hear a sound that doesn't belong to mind? No, it couldn't, because everything is created by the mind. If you form a concept of the true nature as being visible or audible, you allow a dharma of distinction to arise. This is something that's very, very common because we're in a hurry to try to obtain some realization. So we conjure up thoughts of what we believe to be a realization of seeing our new nature. And so then we walk around with this idea that, oh, I saw my true nature. Well, as soon as you say that, you're already lost. This is important because we're not at the beginning level status here. I'm trying to take you through in this way, but you have to kind of follow. All that you've learned up to this point, irregardless of what level you're at, is beneficial to you. Those who have studied very seriously, this is a great opportunity. Those who are beginning, at least you have the opportunity to hear this profound Dharma before you get confused by other heterodox practices or things that will confuse you. Let me repeat that the perceived cannot perceive. And you see, it must be important because I highlighted it, underlined it, and underlined it again. The perceived cannot perceive. So this is hearkening back to the 8,000 line sutra, and then as it was widely disseminated in terms of this doctrine in the Heart Sutra, that the perception of the five skandhas is empty. That which seeks to perceive by the sense of an ego or a personality, life, or being is not real. It's non-existent. It cannot perceive. This is our mistake because we cling to the idea that there's a self that can do this. Huangbo is being so generous and so articulate here. It is very incredible what he is presenting here. It's textbook Chan. Textbook Chan doesn't come from something he made up that was there. It is from the sutras, the Indic sutras that came in, and from the sutras that the Chinese and the treatises that the Chinese did in terms of doing this, that this is here. Chan was not in a vacuum that went, oh, we're going to do this, and it discovered this. No, it didn't. It's using the foundation. It's using what the Buddha taught to present this, and that's important. So, can there, I ask you, be a head attached to the crown on your head? So, if you're walking around and you have another head, then that's not something that's feasible. Doesn't make sense. Which one would you think out of? It's like those two-headed snakes. Which one controls the body? You have a hard enough time with one head, much less having two heads. And I'll go through this part very quickly. It says, I will give you an example of to make my meaning clear. Imagine some loose pearls in a bowl and some large globules and some small. Each one is completely unaware of the others, and none causes the least obstruction to the rest. Their formation did not say, now I'm coming into being, and when they begin to decay, will not say, now I'm decaying. None of these beings born into the six forms of life through the four kinds of birth are exceptions to this rule. Buddhas and sentient creatures have no mutual perception of each other. This is very, very deep, very profound. And you're going to read this by yourself and you're going to go right over it. Why? Because you don't understand it. You go, that's very, very deep. Forget about saying things are very, very deep. You want to understand it. You need to understand it. Don't go to the next line until you understand what they're saying here, because this is pretty deep. It's saying Buddhas and sentient beings have no mutual perception of each other. What does mutual perception mean? Mutual perception is saying there's something here that's seeing something here, subject and object, dualistic, whether we say that the human sentient being is seeing the Buddha over here, or that the Buddha, you would say, okay, well, the sentient being doesn't exist, so the Buddha sees the sentient being. That's why we talk about delivering illusory sentient beings of self-nature, because there's no mutual perception. They're not even the one, they're just the suchness of things. It's important that we alter the mindset so that we eliminate the idea of an ego or a personality. It's not hard to think about that, but it's hard to do. It's hard to give the bum's rush to the self. Self says, but you need me. Who's going to pay the bills? Who's going to go to work? Are you going to go to work, or are you just going to sit there and relax all day? It comes up with so many different reasons why it should stay in the present moment. The four grades of Theravadan adepts who are able to enter nirvana do not perceive, nor are they perceived by nirvana. So if someone is practicing in the Theravada and they reach nirvana, they could not perceive nirvana. It is not a station and where they go to that they can be there and go, wow, so this is what nirvana looks like. I never thought about it this way. This is very, very incredible. Gilbert never told me about how it looks. I don't know whether that's really the real nirvana or not. But Gilbert wouldn't know. And then it says, Theravadins who have reached the 3 stages of holiness and who possess the 10 excellent characteristics neither perceive nor are perceived by enlightenment. So you cannot attain enlightenment. It's a Heart Sutra, right? There is no wisdom nor any attainment. Why? Just as mind is the Buddha. We don't listen to our intrinsic wisdom. We listen to that troublesome fellow called the ego. So it is with everything else down to fire and water and earth and sky. These pairs of elements have no mutual perception in each other. There's no duality. Everything is fundamentally empty. We don't understand that doctrine of emptiness. We try to say, it's not like it's like an empty cup, and we try to do that. But really, in fact, most of you still think of it as some kind of an empty cup. You can't think that way. You've got to think in a way in which you are looking via the perception of the mind. And I hesitated because I'm getting trapped in using vernacular that pertains to an illusory self. But it is this perception of the mind that observes and is aware. The more it is aware, the more it is aware that everything that it sees is a product of mind. That it has always been there. Originally, it's there. If one was to make a chest of drawers out of wood, and you went somewhere and you look at it and you go, oh, this is quite a beautiful chest of drawers here, nice mahogany or whatever. And you go to the person, to the salesman, where do they grow these chest of drawers? And he says, excuse me, where do they grow these chest of drawers? What kind of a plant grows these chest of drawers? Well, there's wood, but it doesn't come out this way. That has to be manufactured. Precisely. Everything we see is in this way that is fabricated. What is it made out of? It is made out of mind. We don't understand that. We pick up a cup and go, this cup is solid. I don't look at it and go, where do they grow these cups? It doesn't make sense. But to us, we see the world in an upside down way. Okay, let's go back to where we were at. So again, the refrain was these pairs of elements have no mutual perception of each other. Sentient beings do not enter the Dharma Dhatu. Okay. And here the Dharma Dhatu, for those who speak Chinese, is translated as Fa Xing. Probably I butchered the pronunciation, but hopefully you'll understand that, which is the true nature. Sentient beings, if they realize the true nature, it's not that they're entering into it, even though sometimes we say jump in the void. Jumping in the void is not something where you go to a cliff and you jump over. It is simply letting go of the idea that there is this sentient being, letting go of Gilbert. When you encounter mind, it is when you let go of the self and the notion of the self and the thinking aspect of the self. It isn't that we let go of thought per se, we let go of attaching thought. We perform the functions as is necessary here, understanding that this is a dream. This is a dream created by mind. That is the Dharma Dhatu. But it's been that way before you realized it. There was no entering of you into the Dharma Dhatu. Where were you before? Where were you before? You cannot enter that. You cannot enter or become a Buddha. This mind is originally the Buddha. There is no attainment of saints, no attainment of bodhisattvas, all the way up to no attainment of the Buddha. That was in the Inconceivable Demonstration of Buddhahood Sutra. So when we see the things and we see them in the proper way, we understand better how to practice. So it says the sentient beings do not enter Dharma Dhatu, nor do Buddhas issue from it. So this is the thing, is going both ways, saying there is no Buddhas that are come out of the Dharma Dhatu, come out of this to a dual land of samsara. Samsara is within the mind. It is not somewhere else. Even if we say it's illusory, it's nevertheless a dream created by the mind. There is no coming and going within the Dharmadhata, nor anything perceptible. This is difficult because when we see this, you have to understand the term Tathagata, the thus come one or thus gone one, is a conventional title that is only applicable in samsara, where we see things. The Buddha came, just like we think, and we still think, that the sun rises and the sun sets. Does it really? Are you sure about that? Why don't you take a viewpoint from the moon and see if it rises or sets? It's different. It's a different perspective. It's a perspective of the mind itself. So when we've got to get this language right if we want to practice. When we do this, it unlocks the sutras. All the sutras are unlocked. So then it says, that's why it said, there's no coming, going, nor anything perceptible. Perceptible, again, coming back to the five skandha perception and the whole idea of form, sensation, perception, volition, and consciousness, all the four mental formations. The fourth is still a creation of mind, even though it appears to us to be solid, which is form. So then we continue. This being so, why this talk? I see, I hear, I receive the intuition through enlightenment. I hear the Dharma from the lips of the enlightened one, or the Buddha's appearing in the world to preach the Dharma. So they're saying, look at this. You can't see it in this way. When you're doing that, you're creating a duality. The practice of Buddha Dharma is to cease these imaginings, to be absorbed by the source, the original source, which is mind itself. So then it says, Katayayana was rebuked by Vimalakirti. So here we know Huangbo, he was studying the Tathagata Garbha Sutras, as Vimalakirti Sutra is one of those. And this is very deep, and he's referencing this here. He's going deep again and saying, hey, look at this. Katayana was rebuked, said, and Katayana was one of the Buddha's major disciples. And he was rebuked for using, and then pay attention, because this is like underlined many times, transitory mentality, which belongs to the ephemeral state, to transmit the doctrine of real existence of matter. That's a lot. That's a lot that's said right there. And of course, if you read this, if you've ever read Huangbo, I'll bet you dollars to donuts. You just gloss right by this. You just went, all right, next lifetime I'll get it. You know, it sounds cool, good, ephemeral, transitory. What does it mean? I have no idea. Do you know what they're talking about here? That's why I put it here. So for you to read, to give you a chance, not just to try to remember what I said. Read it. Does it make any sense to you? This is how you practice. You have to practice in this way. I don't come here just to talk to you and spout out the Dharma. I'm teaching you how to learn, how to practice, how to do it. This is what's important. So let's go back up and let's see what he's saying here, because Vimalakirti was scolding him, and so he was saying, for using transitory mentality, this mentality that's constantly changing. It's a mental state. Anything that's a mental state is transitory. It comes and goes. I'm hot, I'm cold, I'm tired, I'm hungry, I'm interested. All of those are transitory states, transitory mentality, which belongs to the ephemeral state. So, time out. What does ephemeral mean? Ephemeral is used throughout the sutras and the treatises, even as late as Master Shu Yu in Empty Cloud was using that to speak of ephemeral bubbles. What are these ephemeral bubbles? They have no body to them. They're just an appearance, a bubble. Like if you opened up a can of 7-Up and you see all of the bubbles rising up, and you see them there, and they appear to have a form, and then they get to the top, and poof, where did it go? Where did it go? Was it part of the soda? Is it gone somewhere else? It's ephemeral. So many thoughts arising, percolating up to the top. And when we do that, unfortunately, we attach to those ephemeral bubbles, and they cause confusion. We cannot see clearly the source of those ephemeral bubbles. It's easy. What is the source? Mind is the source, the true nature. It is just in this way. So this ephemeral state, to transmit the doctrine transmitting the doctrine that's saying we're using these transitory mentality that belongs to bubbles to transmit the profound. How are we going to do that? The sutras talked about this is like the hair of a tortoise or the horns of a hare, or building a castle in the sky. You can't do it. There's no foundation there. I constantly resort to using the Platform Sutra of Huineng to say there's a platform there. The platform there is the true nature. And we use this guide of Ekayana to be able to see things, because that supports everything. The ephemeral bubbles cannot support anything. One master said, you could be in the ocean and you're grasping, and you're just grasping at foam and seaweed, thinking that it's going to support you, but it doesn't. It does not support you. You have to let that go. Continue on, because this is important. This is going right to the source. So it talks about the doctrine of real existence of matter. So, what is the real existence of matter? Everything is created by the mind. It is in this way. Now, we'll stop there for a moment and see where this came from from Katayana. And in this part, it's this is from the Vimalakirti Sutra, and the Buddha is asking different disciples to look into Vimalakirti, the layperson, because he's ill and he wants to find out how he's doing and what's the source of his illness, and see if there's anything he can do for him. And he asked all these different disciples, and all of them kept turning him down. From the main ones, Kasyapa, Subhuti, all of them except for Manjusri declined to go because Vimalakirti exposed their erroneous views. So in the Tathagata Garbha Sutra, it's really going and fine-tuning and getting even these great disciples of the Buddha and correcting them. So how did Mahakatayana get corrected? Let's read. So it says, the Buddha then said to the Venerable Mahakatayana, go to Lachivi Vimalakirti to inquire about his illness. Katyayana replied, Lord, I am indeed reluctant to go to this good man to inquire about his illness. Why? Lord, I remember one day when, after the Lord had given some brief instruction to the monks, I was defining the expressions of that discourse. So after listening to the Buddha talk, he went to a bunch of monks and was telling them what the Buddha taught. And he said, I was defining the expressions of that discourse by teaching the meaning. So he's teaching the meaning of impermanence, suffering, selflessness, and peace. So he held a discourse to talk about these things. All he probably didn't include in there was emptiness, but how do we talk about emptiness? How do we talk about impermanence and suffering, selflessness, and peace? How is this presented in a proper way? We can present it in a conventional language with conventional understanding and conventional results, which is that it's understood in samsara. But it doesn't go far enough. It's not complete right view. And here, even what they're doing is there's a distinction here, even between in Mahayana of right view and Mahayana practice, that right view is superior. It is from the Tathagata Garbha training. And so there's a difference here. And so that's what the Vimalakirti Sutra is about, in correcting these erroneous ways of trying to explain things from the viewpoint of samsara. So he said, Vimalakirti came here and said to me, Reverend Mahakatayana, do not teach the ultimate reality endowed with activity, production, and destruction. So he's saying, don't teach ultimate reality talking about these terms of, my place here, of activity, production, and destruction. So we've already heard about existent, non-existent, and this activity, and saying these are the things you do, these are the things you practice. If you want to get up higher, then you have to practice these things in this way. It isn't wrong to practice. It is the erroneous belief that you are somehow going to change from a broken roof tile to a diamond that is erroneous. This is important. And I keep repeating this as a refrain to you. So one day it will go through and you will begin to perceive it from the Buddha perception. So he says, Reverend, nothing that was, excuse me, nothing that was ever destroyed is destroyed, nor will ever be destroyed. So nothing that ever was destroyed will be destroyed. It isn't in this way. It is in the story where Master Shen Yang, and I'll cut it down short because this is like story number 37 that I give. But it is one where Master Shen Yang at a retreat was playing like he was holding a plate that had a lot of dust on it. And as he's holding this plate, he's saying, just imagine the practices like this. And you just go, and you blow all the dust off. And what remains is this shiny plate. And so he asked everybody what they thought of his example. And everybody said, oh, that was incredible, very wonderful, beautiful example. And I raised my hand and he looked at me kind of cockeyed and he went like, Gilbert, and I just said, Shifu, I was just wondering where the dust went. Because if we're saying that the plate originally is this way, this dust must also be part of the mind as well. And he feigned that like he was angry at me, but later on, he was asking me about my viewpoint on that. But it is the same thing. There's nothing that was destroyed. The dust was not destroyed and disappeared, nor was anything born or destroyed, created. It's hard for us to understand that because we're filled with all these things that come and go, passing, living and dying and being born and whatever. You'd think that give us cause for concern to say maybe there might be a better solution to this, a better way out, maybe a way out of this dream. So he continues. So he said, such is the meaning of impermanence, the meaning of realization of birthlessness through realization of the voidness of the five aggregates, the five skandha. And voidness here is that they're fundamentally empty, is the meaning of suffering. So when we realize there's no birth, there's no death, nobody created, but if we cling to this idea of a life and being, we produce suffering. We produce the idea that there's suffering, and we don't understand that because we're operating from the idea simply of samsara and nothing more than that. Okay, so then we continue. The fact of non-duality of self and selflessness is the meaning of selflessness. So this non-duality of self and selflessness. Remember, the Buddha said not self, not no self. He said it's not self. Not self means that the self is not a Buddha. The Buddha is that which perceives everything to be mine without the idea of a duality there. So that's selflessness. So when we practice in accord with this and we practice in a selfless manner, then it changes things. Then we're demonstrating the, the Buddhist practice. It's this demonstration of the inconceivable moment to moment. Even in samsara, we demonstrate it in this way. You're demonstrating it by listening. I am demonstrating by presenting this to you. And in this way, it is how we do things. We don't have the idea, Gilbert is so smart, or I am so smart, I'm beginning to understand what he's saying. We just simply conduct this because it's a wholesome practice. We begin to understand and understand when I say, I have nothing to teach you. So we continue. And then he says, that which has no intrinsic substance and no other sort of substance does not burn, and what does not burn is extinguished. Such lack of this extinction is the meaning of peace. So this is the freedom and ease of body and mind. When this realization occurs within the samsaric realm, then the mind is free. And it's free to do what is necessary and demonstrate this. Upon leaving this world, if there was some form of a complete enlightenment, part of the triple body is the Sambhogakaya, which is the reward body, which has this freedom and ease of body and mind, this peace that is being spoken of here by Vimalakirti. Now, what time do we have? Oh yeah, I don't even know how the time went so quickly. One last thing, because I want to tie this in, and I've been cutting these short so that they're more palatable on YouTube, but I really miss those extra 15 minutes that I stretch out to another half hour. The time goes by so quickly. But in this part, it's very interesting because, this is like me trying to do a triple axel somersault, with my mouth and tongue of Nagarjuna's Mula Madhyamaka Karika. And he is referencing the same person here, and now Katayana is a little bit more exalted here than he was from before. And in this one, very interesting one that I have of this one, where it actually has 7 different versions of it in parallel, right next to each other, of different authors showing the same ones and the translations, which I absolutely love because it saves me a lot of time in looking from one interpretation to another interpretation. So if you ever get to see that kind of stuff, it's good and it's worth looking at it to see how different people present it. In this one, it says Katayana was critical of 2 instances that something exists or something does not exist. Discussions of something existing or not existing were refused by the saint Katayana because such discussions of existence or non-existence did not have any special brilliancy. What it meant was that it didn't hold water. If we try to say this exists and this does not exist, or when you start looking at it, remember we're now in Nagarjuna's realm, and Nagarjuna is this master of articulating positions and criticizing positions, more criticizing positions and articulating. He leaves it to mind for one to contemplate to get there, rather than trying to say anything. Like Vimalakirti was silent about certain parts of the Buddha Dharma simply as a demonstration that the words can only take you so far. So here's Katayayana. Now he's been rehabilitated, and in Nagarjuna's, he's saying clearly, here's another version of that same part. So you'll see how different it sounds. Katayayana, it says, I think it says in the instance, Katayayana, both it is and it is not were demonstrated by the Buddha as causing the appearances of being and non-being. This is a very profound part of what's being said here. And you heard it differently from the other one. I'll give you another one where it says Katayana, the two theories um, implying exists and does not exist have been refuted by the Blessed One, who is adept in the existence as well as the non-existence. I kind of like that first one better, though, where it says that Katayana, both it is and it is not, were demonstrated. So the Buddha is demonstrating. This is something that's another refrain of the demonstration of the inconceivable. It is not something that we can articulate, it is demonstrated. And here it's saying it's beyond words. And by the Buddha as causing the appearance of being and non being. That's beautiful. As causing the appearance of being and non being. It is reduced down to beyond not even the one. That the Buddha, everything is created by the mind. Absolutely wonderful. We're going to continue on because Huangpo really knocks this one out of the park. It's very incredible, his scholarship and the profoundness of his bodhicitta in his interest in doing this, and the words here, are pretty amazing. Those who can find this in a Chinese version, hopefully you can find a good one and see it from a little bit closer to the source. But I think it's something that's worth doing. We will continue on with this one. It serves its purpose because it shows that the Chan masters weren't just talking, they were studying. They were studying deeply, and they were making these arguments. This is not easy stuff. I'll bet you dollars to donuts. There's very few places that you hear this kind of a dharma. This is something that is important, but it's at the heart of Chan. And what's here is not necessarily for me to present as the gospel, as for you to contemplate, to do that. And if you follow in my work, you will see that I'm presenting this every single day. If people ask me a question, I will give them an answer. But my answers sometimes appear cryptic, but they aren't. Sometimes they even have multiple meanings. But it doesn't matter. What's important is my goal is not to teach you. My goal is to present to you the proper way to follow the Buddhas and study, to penetrate the sutras. That's what makes the difference. Okay? So that's it for today. I will take questions. Thank you for listening. Yes, Harry.
Hi, Gilbert. How you doing? Um, uh, and thanks again for these amazing teachings. Well, two things, all related. The first thing, the nature and your perception of it are one. So there's two words there. We have nature and perception, but whatever's going on, it couldn't really be expressed. I mean, we don't have any choice but to use language, but um, the nature and the perception are one. So it's a little confusing because there's two words used for something that doesn't necessarily have to be split in two. That's the first thing where you could, and the second is, um, I was wondering if you could map this to Huineng and the flag and wind koan, because I've always thought that the two monks um, are very sincere. They must have come out of a lecture on causes and conditions, and they're really sincerely trying to figure it out. And they can't win the argument and they can't lose the argument. And I think that's what Huineng is trying to show them. But I was wondering if you could just comment on that, please. Thank you.
Actually, I explained that one, and you went to the Connecticut retreat, right? I explained that
Uh,
in detail there.
well, there's doesn't necessarily, for everybody, for me, it's not like it sticks.
It's okay. Let me start with the first part. Now being old, what was your first question? Just start me
Well,
off
it was
now.
just to note that it's
The true
somewhat,
nature and the perception. Okay, got it.
yeah, that's it, yeah.
All right. And this again is something that I talk about quite frequently. And I refer to the Buddha Nature Treatise about this and the idea of the Ru Zi and the Ru Jing. And you have the idea of that the perception of mind is there. It is not separate from the Dharmakaya. And and so when we see things in this way, it there is the it is perceiving the mind ground by its own nature. It is not something that can be conceived of or diagrammed out, although I diagram it out all the time, but diagram it out that say that this is it, this is the schematic of it. The only thing we can do is by using diagrams is to show that there's in fact no separation, no duality there, no subject object. It is a different way of doing it. It is just simply like if you are sitting there and all of a sudden you have an itch on your arm, would not you know that your arm is itching? Of course, but you're you could say that you are that part of the Dharmakaya, that's your body. So how could the mind not know its own body? And so it is in this way that it perceives, but it's a different perception from samsaric perception, which is so myopic that it can only see things just in front of it. And actually, I was just reading something about that today, a commentary on the Lankavatara Sutra, where they were talking about how the difference in terms of the practice and how we if we practice in a myopic way, we cannot get it. We have to be able to expand. That's why I always use the analogy of infinity, which cannot be discussed, much less even thought about. It's impossible to think of infinity in any definitive way. It can only be contemplated, but contemplating goes to that thing we were talking about last week, which is the Gnostic aspect of mind, which is the Ru-Zit. And so this Ru-Ru is is what is connected, and that's why they were talking about it as a Ru-Ru, to say that these things are that way. Now, in terms of um, the flag waving and the person saying that one was saying the wind was waving, the other one was saying the flag was um, was waving. All of those are short-sighted, myopic, because of the idea that they are in a duality of somebody experiencing that rather than someone who has obtained the realization of Buddha mind perception, not necessarily complete enlightenment, but just the Buddha mind perception does not perceive things in that way. those events in the environment are perceived as causes conditions um, that are part of the Dharmakaya. And they're seen in this way. They're seen in their reality like a raw feed. It would be like if you gave a feed of some event and you gave the same feed to uh, to one news station and you gave the same feed to another one, they'd have a completely different take on it, depending on what their how their minds are perfumed by the Laya Vijnana, by the eighth consciousness. But it isn't in this way. When we when we see things, we just see them as they are. We can be aware that this person has this impression and this person has this impression. We don't have to say that they're right or we don't have to say they're wrong. When we say that they're right, it means that they're wrong. Mm-hmm. But it's just nicer to say you're right than to say you're wrong, because there's neither wrong nor right, neither sacred nor profane. It's just a confusion in the mind. And so when we see things, it enables us to be able to harmonize with the environment better. That's what's important. When we look at things and we attribute some cause to them, we are not understanding the fundamental nature of the appearances simply belonging to mind and simply being empty. And that was what Hui Ning was trying to impart to them, is your minds are moving, and the minds are moving, and people would say, aha, your mind is moving. But no, it isn't in that way. It is that the mind is moving. And when that happens, certain appearances will be made. And so it's clear in terms of that it's neither right nor wrong. It's just that mind, everything returns to the mind. And that's what Hui Ning does with that one. And people don't understand that. They just think, oh, you're attached to this or you're attached to that. No, it has nothing to do. Hui Ning was flying much higher than that. Yeah. Much, much higher. He was saying that the mind is moving. Okay, because that is causes and conditions. They never fail. So he was looking at it from a different way, much higher. You can't get that on the first take of reading the Platform Sutra. It takes you many, many times to do that. And then once you are able to do that, then when you shift over to other sutras, all of a sudden they start to make sense. Not bad. So thank you for the questions. They were good questions. Okay. Sam, what you got?
It's good to see you, Gilbert, and thank you again for taking us into the deep end of the Dharma pool. I appreciate it. What I did want to ask you about was more so also to check my understanding. The part when you went that you highlighted, the perceived cannot perceive.
Yes.
That was very profound, and some contemplation that came out of that was the first thing was that the perceived or an object, let's say in this case, whether it's a physical object or it's a mental formation, since it can't perceive or it does not, it in and of itself doesn't have awareness, is what makes it not self. And something this made me think about was the perceived cannot perceive, only perception can perceive. And along with that, to rephrase it would be that only awareness is aware. So only awareness can be aware. And sorry, I know that wasn't the best way to close it off, but was more so looking to kind of just check my understanding of that phrase.
You're very good at kind of blocking these things out, and that's not bad. I mean, that's what you do. You try to do this, and then and you're very good at using well-known advisors. I give you a lot of credit for that, because that's important. If you don't do that, you won't learn, and it's this interest of trying to do this, more so than to get it right, or to get the little gold star for getting it right. It's like testing what you're doing. And what I'm going to do is I'm not going to answer you. I want you to contemplate it for the week and see if there's anything a bit out of place. Okay. I'm not saying there is. I'm just saying there might be, but I want you to look at it. Okay. I want you to look and say, okay, does this perception perceive? And
Mm.
and so that kind of like giving you a hint, in terms of that. But take a look at it. What you were talking about. It's worth your while to do that. That's what a well-known advisor does. Sometimes is kicks it back to you and says, I don't know, listen to what you said, see if it makes sense. Again, I'm not telling you it doesn't make sense, so I don't want you to say, that you got a failing grade. I just want you to take a look at it. Okay.
No, I appreciate you, Gilbert, because you're giving me an opportunity to really figure it out in my
Yeah.
own way versus relying on someone else's understanding. So thank
Don't
you.
don't think about it. Contemplate it.
Yes, thank
That's
you.
that's where you'll get value. Okay, good. Michael.
Hi, Gilbert. So you mentioned tonight, and also you wrote it on the forum earlier this morning, that to realize that everything is created by mind is not awakening. So I wondered, why not?
What I'm trying to remember the context in which I wrote that. It is when we realize everything is created by mind, it's still a book knowledge, and it may be um, a profound statement, a profound understanding, but one still has to have a realization of that. So when we realize it, when we realize it outside of samsara, and there's an experience, it isn't necessarily enlightenment, but it is a solid realization that's there. It's that when one takes a step outside of samsara and touches the infinite, you cannot talk about that other than just to say that, and even that is like doesn't make any sense. But it is that self-absorption that kicks it into the esoteric, and so it's that way. But nevertheless, you have to establish that platform, and this is where I think that both the northern and southern schools are consistent, which is that one has to develop a platform. The other one of them is developing a tower, and um, one is developing a platform like a landing zone, and one is trying to reach to get out. The other one is going, there's no exit. Everything is mind. Everything is created by the mind. And then that experience of that, um, which even transcends even beyond the conventional metaphysical, we cannot talk about it. But my purpose in saying that, Michael, is that people do not attach to just the words and parrot them. Okay, that's the purpose of that. If somebody truly has a realization that everything is created by the mind, this is this is this is good. I mean, I can say that, and everybody will go, "Well, that's great." But if that could do it, I could sell this. Except everybody would copy it on TikTok, and it'd go over, and like in 30 minutes, everybody would know it. But in any case, the thing is that that it is something that is our platform to work from. And as you saw the articulation of Master Huangpo here, that kind of a platform is very useful. That's how he's doing this, and he's demonstrating it in a very artful way to be able to do that, still remaining true to the Dharma and to this profound Dharma. So it's that way. Okay, it's a good question.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Wei Shan.
Hi, Gilbert. I think that was a great question. That actually, from Michael's question, really triggered something in me, because everything created by the mind, we say, realize that. How? Is it possible, for instance, somebody never seen a snowman, never seen snow? They don't know what that is, but they only know water. But only when the snowman melted to become water, they realize that snowman is not real. It's only water. I don't know, because I was just thinking during your conversation with Michael, and this is as far as I can go. I'm just saying, realize everything created by mind. It's kind of like you realize the snowman is actually water. Meaning you cannot directly see the snowman and say it's created by mind. You only when you realize it has a different quality, then you know it is not real. It's only water. I'm saying the realization is not directly seeing my hand and say this is created by mind. It's actually I see something else, then deduce it's created by mind.
This, ladies and gentlemen, is mind work. It is what we do. We try to take these and try to look at these analogies and try to sort through. You can see he's doing that, and he's actually there, but he doesn't want to jump in. He's kind of tiptoeing around and flip-flopping from water to ice, and wondering which one is the true nature, where they both are not separate from the true nature. They're just in this way. But he's correct that it's difficult for someone who has never seen water or experienced water to know that something that's frozen can be so fluid. And it is in this way, actually, that the mind is. We talk about from the Queen Sharmala Sutra, the static defilements, and these fundamental ignorance is one of them. These are static. They hold you into place, into thinking that these properties of scientific rules and everything apply everywhere, rather than just simply in samsara, because it's inconceivable that there could be anything other than what we see through the senses. But this kind of an idea is actually a very good metaphor, because that metaphor enables one to see the fluidity of mind, constantly changing, constantly moving. It is not like a crystal or a rock. It is moving. And it's constantly changing formations, whether it's from ice or steam or water. All of these things, they're not separate. They all maintain the same property of this intrinsic nature. And when we see things in this way, how could you not see the intrinsic nature everywhere you look? So it's these that we use to try to take the leap, and his articulation, or I should say his attempt at articulation of something that cannot be articulated is very admirable, because it's something we still need to do. And so just keep working that way. That's what you do. It's like a puzzle, and you have to just keep trying to turn it, looking it through this way and that way and that way, until it finally works. But it will come. It will come in that way. It just Just simply by the analogies you're using now, they're getting closer to proper analogies or metaphors. Okay, so it's good.
Okay. Thank you, Gilbert. And I will re-listen to it. I think I made it the other way around. You only see snow. Never mind.
It doesn't matter. It'll be fine. Just keep playing with it.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, Eon. It's been eons.
Has been. But I'm just bringing today a plug for Gilbert's upcoming retreat
Oh, thank you.
that is going to be at DDRC on the I think it's the 3rd, the 11th. Is that when it is?
Yes.
Yes, the 3rd through the 11th. And I just can't emphasize how wonderful and how important it is to be able to go on retreats like this. I mean, no offense, Gilbert, but you're getting a little long in the tooth. And we, as your students, we who have benefited from your teaching and who believe in it and do our utmost to apply it, we don't know how many more of these opportunities we're going to have. And they are absolute treasures. So anyone who has the ability to come to events like these, please do. You will not regret it, and the people that you encounter in your life will not regret it. It can only bring about supreme benefit. So please come, and please practice sincerely and diligently, and it will be for the absolute greatest good.
Yeah. Let me say a bit. Thank you very much, Ian, because it is important. It's important to show support too, because this is, as you've seen, it's a little bit deeper than than where most well-known advisors go with in terms of presenting the Dharma. I challenge you all the time and bring you the best quality instruction I can give you. But this sometimes is not necessarily that popular because people say, "Oh, Gilbert, he teaches too profound," and but it is my interest in bringing you up here rather than to talk to you about ABCs. There's plenty of people that you can go to a retreat and make you feel good and say, "Oh, this master, I knew everything he was saying to me. I understood it." I don't want you to do that. I want you to come out of mine and go, like Wei Shan, what is this? Is it this way or is it that way? Like Sam, is it this way or is it that way? And you're working on things, and that's what's important. And so it isn't simply there, and I'm not feeding you like a little baby birds. I'm giving you a full meal. And so I hope that you can do that. I hope that you can encourage others because I need to. If not, again, it's not. It's like if I went there and taught everybody how to sing Kumbaya, I could do that, and it could be very popular in terms of doing that. But I would this I could not really rest in doing that, something like that. So thank you. Wei Shan, you wanted to say something about that? Or you just still have your hand up?
No, actually, I do want to say something. I
Okay.
just quickly, my mind churning, and I want to. Earlier, I was using snowman and water. Now I'm thinking a dream and wake up. I'm trying to say, when we say everything is created in mind, when we realize that, it's actually we realize something else. Meaning, like we're in a dream. We can never say this is a dream. Only when we wake up, we know that was a dream. Then we enter back into the dream. We say, okay, now it's a dream. I'm saying realizing everything is created in mind. You cannot just say everything you look, or including me, we know it's created in mind. It cannot be. You cannot see something different to contrast this dream to realize it's a dream. But then with that gnosis and the knowledge, you start to know, okay, this is really a dream. Sorry.
It's in this way that you're working through this. And that's the thing that's important. That's why I say I want people to listen to how you're processing this, because that's how people should process this information, so that we process it in a way where we feel um, uh, and not at ease. We want to resolve it. It's sweet, like a sweet candy, but it's like stuck in the back of your throat, and you still want to resolve it, even though it's sweet. And so it's the diligence in terms of that, and the demonstration, moment to moment of your practice, that will bring you to those kinds of realizations. They will come. Scout's honor. Um, it will come. You just have to have faith. Okay. And sometimes it's a small amount. Sometimes it's a massive amount. Some people have very significant realizations, and others have little ones. But it's okay. Those are the foundations for the larger ones. So it's fine. But this is how we practice. That's why I call it mind work, because we're really working on the mind. This is like jazz music, people like pop music and auto tune and all that other stuff. And jazz is difficult to understand, but once you start to understand it, you absolutely love it, because it's free flow. And so that's the thing, is we have to keep bringing people to it, so that the people can understand, and this does not die out. That was Master Shen Yang's big lament, was worrying about whether there's going to be people to advance this in the future. And there's very few, very, very few. I mean, we're still advancing Chan. We haven't gotten to that in Master Huangpo, but he even makes an indication about the distinction of even Mahayana practitioners not adhering to right view. So, okay. So, yeah, anyway, Sean,
Thank
that's
you.
good.
Thank you very much.
So, join up, tune in, come and see me. Okay. So, anything else? No other person? Okay. All right. We can